Brandon Aiyuk had a reported good meeting with the San Francisco 49ers. What does that mean? Kyle Shanahan, where does he rank amongst NFL head coaches? Coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we especially love and appreciate it when you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Okay, before we get into the Brandon Aiyuk meeting with the San Francisco 49ers, what we know about it, which isn't a lot, and the PFS ranking on NFL head coaches, where Kyle Shanahan ranks and what we think about it and where we think Kyle Shanahan should rank amongst current NFL head coaches. Croc, we've been hit pretty hard. Some interesting comments the last couple of episodes. One, Commanders fans found our YouTube channel. Welcome to all the new listeners that are Washington Commanders fans, talking about the potential trade that the Niners and Commanders may have talked about with Brandon Aiyuk before the draft, and us talking about Terry McLaurin. And it's really funny because there'll be a 49ers fan that says, Croc, you're crazy, and Brandon Aiyuk's way better than Terry McLaurin. And then there's a bunch of Commanders fans that were like, you guys don't know anything about Terry McLaurin. He's better than Brandon Aiyuk. He's 1,000-yard seasons. And I thought it was really funny. And we encounter this a lot where it's like fans tend to love their guys and overvalue them versus other players around the NFL. And they always want to fight for their guys until their guys aren't on the team anymore. Then their guys were trash. They didn't like them. Then they like somebody new. We've seen it with I think the poster child for that is Jimmy Garoppolo, right? With how people talked about Jimmy Garoppolo, and now he's the worst quarterback that's ever existed now that he's not a San Francisco 49er. But the Commander fans came strong. They love them some Terry McLaurin, and they were pretty mad, especially at me, about my take that Brandon Aiyuk might be a better route runner and a better player than Scary Terry McLaurin. I stand by the tape don't lie, Croc. And I actually went back too and watched more Terry McLaurin just to see. Terry McLaurin's a good football player. I love how he plays. He's a tough football player. He almost every time he wins, it's the same thing. And he's just running down the field. He's good with deep balls. He's good at going. He's better contested catch. He's better downfield than Aiyuk. Aiyuk is better in every other facet of the game, including after the catch. Terry McLaurin's tough though. He'll run through guys, but he's not even as good as Brandon Aiyuk after the catch. So Terry McLaurin, good player, really good player. Brandon Aiyuk's better, and the tape don't lie, Croc.
First of all, we got to rewind a little bit. I am so happy that you brought up Jimmy Garoppolo because there is kind of this, I don't even want to say war, but I brought it up a few times. I think now I'm kind of the poster child. You talked about poster child and Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm kind of the poster child for pushing back on just how bad Jimmy Garoppolo is, right? Like everybody now, he's the worst quarterback ever. And I'm like, well, hold on. When he was a 49er, y'all were not saying that. You weren't saying that this is this terrible quarterback. He was top 5 in really a lot of statistical categories as it pertains to quarterbacks in the NFL. And then we see him go somewhere else. It doesn't look great, and now he's terrible. I do think that a lot of fan bases are usually very hot or cold when talking about players. If it's one of their guys, definitely they're all in. If it is someone else, sometimes there are some fans that are a little bit more kind of objective to talking about it, but a lot of times it's very biased conversation. So I like that you and we were able to kind of be yin and yang in that conversation, and I think it brought a little bit more balance to it. But Terry McLaurin, I think Scary Terry is a terrific receiver, and you have acknowledged it. You just don't think he's as good as Aiyuk. I think it's probably a lot closer to the point where there is no way in hell I think that any conversations there, or maybe there's just flat conversations. Hey man, Terry McLaurin in it too. Well, first of all, no. Yeah. unless it's the 49ers making the offer, I don't see any way how Washington was like, we'll give you McLaurin and a day 2 pick. Like that, to me, they are way too close in talent and ability for there to be that kind of conversation.
And the fact that Terry McLaurin has a better contract, although the contract thing almost doesn't matter anymore, Croc, because your contract today doesn't matter because tomorrow they're going to say, hey, these other guys got paid, so now I want more. Like Terry McLaurin, if he's that good, he's going to say, hey, guys, I want more money. And they're going to get more money. And then that contract's going to change anyway. And we've seen it so many times. So I don't know if the contract part even matters that much. But let's say you think Aiyuk's better. His contract's going to be bigger. So McLaurin has a better, more favorable contract for the team. So maybe that evens it out. And I'll buy that argument. Terry McLaurin's really good. I just think Brandon Aiyuk's a better route runner and a little bit better football player. That's all. But Terry McLaurin is awesome. Yeah. And here's my thing with the Washington thing. And I don't know who called who, how close a deal was to be done. But if Terry McLaurin is that good and you got another first round wide receiver, why are you even calling the 49ers about Brandon Aiyuk? So that doesn't make sense to me. You only call about Brandon Aiyuk if you think he's better, because you're going to pay him $30 million if you're Washington, if you trade for him. You better think he's better than Terry McLaurin. So why would they even call?
I think that was the conversation about, Justin Jefferson, which clearly, I think everybody would say Justin Jefferson is a better receiver in the NFL today than Brandon Aiyuk has been. But for the 49ers, if you do think that Brandon Aiyuk is this receiver and you're offering him a bunch of money, why would you go and seek out another receiver? And it's similar to that with Washington. Why are you calling it? Now, when they said Dotson, and part of this might be, well, first of all, when they said Dotson, I can understand that. You say Dotson in a day 2 pick.
Who's they, by the way? Who's they? That's just people that were trying to figure out what an offer might have been from Washington, right? So we don't know. We don't know if McLaurin, Dotson. My guess is I bet they were offering their high second round pick. That is because this is a pre-draft move, by the way. So this is before the Niners drafted Ricky Pearsall. This is pre-draft stuff that this trade was talked about. My guess that it was probably something revolving around at the time, which was Washington's higher second round pick. And the Niners probably wanted more than that for Brandon Aiyuk. It probably was, but at the same time, it could have been a player too. But again, if you're Washington, you must think that Brandon Aiyuk's better than Dotson and Terry McLaurin if you're making a call to the 49ers about a guy that you're going to have to pay $30 million a year to and give up something of value for.
Well, I think also this is the other part about it. This isn't the Washington Commanders who randomly are calling for Brandon Aiyuk. This is Washington Commanders with Adam Peters, new general manager of that team, calling about a player that he knows and sees what he is. And he might be saying what Eric Crocker has been screaming for a while now. Heck, man, yeah, he's good. 80 catches, 80 balls for the 49ers and, 1,350 yards. But we put him in this offense and you have Terry McLaurin. Hey, let's have Jaden Daniels throw that ball around the ballpark all day long. And that's a receiver who could be a 100-catch guy for 1,400 yards. So yeah. He probably a lot like me feels like Brandon Aiyuk is almost, I don't want to use the word undervalued because I'm pretty sure Kyle Shanahan values every aspect of his game. But when it comes to the passing game, again, I think this 49ers offense revolves more so around the run first or run looks. And because of that, I think Aiyuk is kind of a little bit lower on the totem pole as it pertains to the weapons than he would be on another team.
Next, Brandon Aiyuk. He had a reportedly good meeting with the San Francisco 49ers. No deal yet, though, for him. And where does Kyle Shanahan rank on the list of current NFL head coaches next? Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier on Gametime. And prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. I've gotten San Francisco Giants tickets. You jump into the city any day you want. Oh, I got some time. I can go catch the ball game. Even up to an hour after the game starts, save up to 60% off buying last-minute sports, concert, comedy, theater tickets near you. I got a Giants ticket, $11, caught the game, had a great old time, and it couldn't have been easier than with Gametime. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. And by the way, the view from your seat feature, love that. You pull it up, you pick up your phone, and it's not just a picture of what it's going to look like sitting there. It's panoramic. It's like you're trying to take a picture in your phone. You move around with your phone, you see exactly what it's going to look like from those seats. And no surprise fees at checkout. So take all the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We were talking about poster children, Croc. I can't wait to see some posters behind you in your new office, in your new home. Congratulations, moving into your new house. You finally got that thing figured out. I know it's been rough on you since you moved back to California. You didn't have quite the home situation the way you wanted it, especially for your podcasting career. And now you got that office squared away. And congrats to you on that.
I was telling you, I don't think people truly understand what I was going through during episodes. And maybe they could tell if you watch, you could probably tell more that there's a lot of stuff going on around me. My daughters, I'd have a daughter want something. She's right here outside the camera frame and she's asking me questions. I'm on mute. I'm trying not to talk to her. A lot of times I would cover my mouth like this and people probably thought I was yawning, but really that was me yelling something to them upstairs to shut the hell up. So there was a lot going on in the Crocker household over the last year, but we thugged it out right here on Locked On, and you've been a trooper throughout it all.
Love it. Fantastic stuff. So another bit of pushback from a recent episode, Croc, and I want to talk about this because we did a really fun episode yesterday. It was really cool, and one of our listeners threw down the gauntlet. They asked for us to put together an all-time NFL team to compete with his all-time 49ers team. And we did it, and kind of on the spot, we came up with our own team, and it was a good team, and it was a better team than the 49ers team, but just barely. But I think it could have been better, and actually our listener was called out by some other listeners too about the players that were on his all-time 49ers team. I think the big omission on the all-time 49ers team might have been someone like Aldon Smith. If we're talking about peak as 49ers, Jimmy Johnson, Hall of Fame corner, could maybe have made the list over some other guys on it. And I think those are all fair. And I think really we were probably unfair to some of the old timers, right? Like the real old school players. The new school guys made the list over the old school guys, especially on our all-time NFL team. But there were some big omissions. We didn't have Ray Lewis on our squad. It was Luke Kuechly instead of Ray Lewis and Derek Brooks. And so a lot of folks didn't like that. Let's see.
Which I understand. We had the conversation about doing it 5 minutes before we hit record. And then we recorded and we're talking about the guys that, were on the 49ers team. And then we also discussed building our own team, but it was on the fly. It wasn't like Peacock and I sat around for 3 hours before the show started and was like, all right, let's not forget Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis is one of the best linebackers in NFL history. And if we would have just thought of him, and I don't know why we didn't, either one of us, but he clearly should have been on there before Brooks or Luke Kuechly. It was an accident, y'all. We apologize.
And it doesn't really matter because that wasn't, we were just trying to come up with an all-time team that see if we could beat the all-time 49ers team. And that was the whole point of the podcast. Like, man, it's pretty crazy that it's that the all-time 49ers team could actually compete with an all-time NFL grades team. That's how awesome this organization has been throughout history and all the players that have come through there. So that was pretty cool. And it was a really fun thing. And yeah, it was something that we wanted to do on the fly. It wasn't like, we want to have the best team no matter what. We was like, let's do this live and figure it out and kind of hash it out. And so that was the fun of it, is to build the team live without us talking to each other a lot about it before that. Another player that I'm all in on this one, by the way. So we had one LT. What about the other LT, LaDainian Tomlinson instead of Emmitt Smith? Maybe someone to catch the football a little bit more out of the backfield on our all-time squad. I'm on board with that one as well.
I'm definitely on board with LT Marshall Faulk. That's another name that I thought of later that I would take in a heartbeat, probably even over Emmitt Smith. Again, Emmitt Smith, some of it is about flavor, right? And, we get to watch Patrick Mahomes and what he's doing and just how it looks, right? And there's just certain flair to it. And, also there's other quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls. Think of Eli Manning, right? They look drastically different than Patrick Mahomes. And I think when you think of guys like Emmitt Smith, he had a terrific career, but there was something about his style and how he ran where give me Marshall Faulk, give me LaDainian Tomlinson. I just like the way that they play more than Emmitt Smith. So if those two guys right there, who if we would have thought about those guys' names, they probably would have been over some of the other guys.
And just a few other players from a bygone era too. The $1 million backfield. I think there's a number of other players that could have made the list on the all-time 49ers side of things. But, just wanted to let everybody know out there how it went, how the process went, and it was a fun episode. If you didn't catch it, go back and watch or listen to that would have been Thursday's episode of Locked On 49ers. Had a lot of fun talking all-time Niners and all-time NFL and putting a little team together.
We had one listener say that he was losing sleep over thinking about that dang episode.
Good. I like it. I'm glad. Brandon Aiyuk, according to Tom Pelissero, the meeting with the 49ers was quote unquote good. And we had thought maybe the meeting didn't go great because after the meeting, Brandon Aiyuk was on social media when he said the thing about the whole, I thought they weren't trying to trade me, about the Washington Commanders trade report. But apparently it went good. Now, here's my question. Do you think Tom Pelissero's source for how this meeting went is on the Aiyuk side or on the 49ers side? Because if Tom Pelissero is like texting, hey, John Lynch, how'd that meeting go with Brandon Aiyuk? Oh, it went great, right? If he texted Brandon Aiyuk, hey, how'd that meeting go? Oh, man, these dudes don't want me. So I wonder I wonder who the source was, first of all, for this from Tom Pelissero saying that it was a good meeting. But the key part is that they are moving ahead with negotiations. So had a good meeting. They're moving ahead with negotiations, according to Tom Pelissero, after the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk had that meeting. I don't even know who was in the building for this meeting, but apparently things are good. And, at some point after the 4th of July holiday weekend is when things are expected to be resumed and those conversations to pick up again. So I think you can go on your holiday travels, go have a barbecue, have some fun, celebrate Independence Day, and not be too worried about the Brandon Aiyuk stuff. After the holiday, they're going to get back at it and hammer this thing out, Croc. So July is the new ETA for a new Brandon Aiyuk contract.
Can the 49ers or even Brandon Aiyuk, can they say publicly, it was terrible, it went bad?
Yes, I think Aiyuk's side could. The 49ers side for sure not. 100%. That's why I think the source was probably the Niners side on this, just because it's like, okay. But if the source is the 49ers side, of course it went good. And they're resuming negotiations, right? So we'll see.
That whole thing, Brandon Aiyuk, I just have never heard of that. Like maybe I have just been naive to contract negotiations, but I haven't heard of a player saying, oh man, these things are so weird. This is going, I don't like how this is going. Let me set up a meeting between the 49ers front office and my agent. We need to get this under control. And I think that's the part where, like you talked about the other day, we don't want to know how the sausage is made. My bro Donald, my best friend, he keeps trying to tell me all these different things. He's like, bro, stop telling me because I want to like these things, And I think that's what Aiyuk needs to do, right? Stop telling me about the contract negotiations and how it's go. Just get the number that I'm looking for or that you think is best suited. Get me the best deal that you can, and let's get this thing on the road. But I don't want to know how the sausage is made. And right now, I think he's a little bit too hands-on. He put the gloves on, he put the little hazmat suit on so that he doesn't get all the stuff on him. And I think he's a little too knee deep into this contract negotiation situation. Most people just let their agent handle it. Hey, man, I told my agent, this is what I'm looking for. Get me the best deal that you see suited, and then go from there. But calling an agent or calling a meeting with your agent in the front office, that's just something I just have not heard.
And was it just Aiyuk or was it the agent too?
I'm assuming the agent has to be. I don't even know if an agent will allow his client to go into a meeting talking about the contract with the front office without him. That would be a big slap in the face to the agent for sure.
Right. Or that's telling us that the player's not happy with the agent, might need to find a new agent too, we've seen happen. But it's rare for this to, and especially this time of the year. Like, it doesn't happen. That's why I was surprised. Like, are they going to ink a deal in late June? Because it never happens. There's they're on this vacation time in the NFL. So yeah. So
what do you think?
You're right, Croc. It's a rarity. It's something you don't hear about often, as a player calling a meeting with the team. And there have been meetings with players and teams and them trying to figure something out. But usually it's a bad sign, because that means the negotiations are not going well.
Nick Bosa got signed right before week 1. And we didn't hear a peep out of this situation. Everybody was like, okay, when is it going to happen? When is it, and maybe he was a little less on the edge because he felt like, I know it will get done. And maybe Brandon Aiyuk, because of the trade talks, trade conversations, the money thrown out, all these different receivers who have been signed throughout the process, maybe that makes it more difficult. Because Nick Bosa knew, I will be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL when it's all said and done. Aiyuk is like, well, we don't want to pay you this much. Like, we don't use you like this. We don't want to pay you this. We don't. And maybe there's a little bit more uncertainty that's making him a little bit more on edge, a little uneasy with this whole thing.
And wide receivers are kind of weirdos too sometimes. So I don't know if that's what it is. I don't know if you have to be. I think corners and wide receivers, but especially wide receivers. And you would know better than I, Croc, and you know more guys that have played professionally wide receiver that you are tight with and close with. Are they all weird? Even like after their career's over and they're done? Were they born that way? Is it you have to be wired in a certain kind of crazy way where you think everyone's out to get you to be a great wide receiver?
I think that they are probably a little bit more on the emotional side than some of the other positions.
Why is that?
I don't know. I have no idea, but maybe that's a good thing for them in their careers. I remember Marvin Harrison saying that he needed to see Marvin Harrison Jr. care a little bit more about getting the ball, targets, going to your quarterback, going to your offensive coordinator about, hey, I need these looks, and maybe it's something that they're groomed into thinking that way. But I will say this. On the field, Brandon Aiyuk has been the consummate pro. He's done a terrific job doing everything that the 49ers ever asked him. He's been super efficient. He has improved in every aspect of his game. I love how he goes out there and blocks. I'm pretty sure Kyle Shanahan does as well. But this is just part of negotiations, and he's trying to get involved with how the sausage is made, and I think he needs to step away from that.
Some people do make their own sausage at home, and I bet it's pretty good. Artisan sausage. Maybe that's what Brandon Aiyuk is into. But the meeting went good. The negotiations ongoing. Brandon Aiyuk improving. Better than Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, a good player, though. Very good player. Scary Terry. Next, Kyle Shanahan. How good of a coach is he? Where should he rank amongst current NFL head coaches next? Another one we've been asked about, Croc. And by the way, if there's a question you have for Croc and I here on Locked On 49ers as we get ready for training camp, let us know at BD Peacock, at Crocky209. Drop a question in the YouTube comments. Pro Football Focus, it's list season for Pro Football Focus, and they dropped their top 10 list for head coaches currently in the NFL. And Kyle Shanahan came in at number 2, Croc. And this is one where Andy Reid is number 1. He's back-to-back Super Bowl champion. I think most people right now, especially post Bill Belichick, agree that Andy Reid is the best head coach in the NFL. Kyle Shanahan coming in at number 2. And this is one where it's kind of the opposite phenomenon of what we talked about earlier with players. There was actually pushback from 49ers fans, some 49ers fans, that Kyle Shanahan shouldn't be 2 because there's other coaches on the list that have won Super Bowls, and Kyle Shanahan has not and will not because he's not built like a head coach that can win a Super Bowl, Croc.
I just talked about receivers and how they can be a little bit more emotional than some of the other positions, but I don't think anyone is as emotional as fans. And I think fans being a little too close to this situation with the 49ers, and I understand the expectations are, hey, man, you have a really good team. You have a good coaching staff. You got to win a Super Bowl. But 49er fans won't truly understand this. I mean, what's it been? 3 Super Bowl appearances, maybe 4, 5, 6 conference championship appearances since like 2011. I mean, like there are a lot of fan bases. You guys got to understand the Detroit Lions just won their first playoff game since like 1990. So I understand 49er fans and other people kind of pushing back a little bit on the greatness of Kyle Shanahan and, him as a coach. But what he has done with this team, starting from scratch, like having to clean out an entire roster and build it up to where the expectations are Super Bowl or bust, that is a damn good head coach and definitely one that should be near the top. Now, do you have him ahead of, Mike Tomlin, McVay, some of these other guys on this list that have Super Bowls? I think maybe that's where their conversation is. But if you had a coach's draft right now, are GMs taking Mike Tomlin over Kyle Shanahan?
I don't think so. John Harbaugh might have the best resume to say, yeah, not yet, kid. I'm number 2. It's Andy Reid 1, then John Harbaugh, then Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan has had McVay's number. McVay won the most important game, though, against Kyle in the NFC Championship game, and he has a Super Bowl. So I could buy the argument. Kyle is definitely up there. Is he number 2? I don't know. I think winning a Super Bowl would absolutely solidify him as number 2, but I don't think that Kyle can't win a Super Bowl. I do think he's done some things, and he's not a perfect head coach. And I really do think that Kyle Shanahan could learn some things from Andy Reid. And I think Kyle right now is in the point in his career where he's still gripping a little too tight, and he's trying to make it happen too hard rather than letting it happen. And Andy Reid has really become almost like a Zen. He doesn't really have that. He doesn't really cut that figure, but he's kind of at the Zen portion of his career where he's allowing his GM to go get this quarterback out of Texas Tech that, runs the air raid and is kind of wild and throwing balls behind his back. And it's like, well, teams didn't know what to do with this guy. And Andy Reid's like, this guy's insanely talented. Let's go get this guy. And some of the other things that he the whole go for 2 thing in the Super Bowl, the overtime. Those 2 head coaches just looked at it completely different. And I think part of Kyle Shanahan's problem, and I think he still can get better as a head coach, he might be gripping a little bit too tight. And maybe needs to become a little bit more like Andy Reid. And it's a lot easier now for Andy Reid to loosen up once he got his first Super Bowl, and it's allowed him to be probably a better head coach even after that. It's a little bit harder if you haven't gotten that Super Bowl either. And so we'll see how it goes for Kyle Shanahan. He's up there. He's one of the better coaches in the league. And Matt LaFleur probably underrated. I thought it was really cool that he was number 6 on this. So here's the list: Andy Reid 1, Kyle Shanahan 2, John Harbaugh 3, Sean McVay 4, Mike Tomlin 5, Matt LaFleur 6, Dan Campbell 7, D'Amico Ryan's in the top 10 with a bullet in his first year at 8, Kevin Stefanski, the Browns 9, and Sean McDermott in Buffalo 10. So that is the top 10 according to Gordon McGinnis. Made this list for Pro Football Focus. If you said Harbaugh belongs above Shanahan, I don't think I would fight you necessarily. If you said because of the Super Bowls, Tomlin and McVay had to go above Kyle, and Kyle's 5, okay, but Kyle's clearly top 5. And I think if there was a head coach draft in the NFL, and maybe considering age, Kyle Shanahan might go number 1.
One coach that is kind of left off that list, Sean Payton. And I know he just kind of, he took a little hiatus, came back, not a great situation in Denver. But, I think if you handed him a ready-made roster, I think he might be a little bit higher on his list. Obviously, has to do some reshaping over there in Denver. But I think Sean Payton is a guy that should be mentioned as well, because prior to, not being in New Orleans, he was talked about as one of the better offensive minds in the league and one of the better head coaches, and another guy here who has a Super Bowl victory.
Yeah, Sean Payton's probably sitting there like, wait a second, I got a ring, and you're putting D'Amico Ryans after 1 season ahead of me on this list? Hold on a second.
Not even just D'Amico. I mean, D'Amico, you got Dan Campbell, and I understand like it's Kevin Stefanski. That might be the one where it's like, how is he over me? You know. But one thing about this list as well, I noticed something. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, John Harbaugh, 2-time MVP winner Lamar Jackson, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. You know, these guys have quarterbacks. And if you're somebody like Sean Payton, who's not on this list, you might look at your quarterback room and say, you know what? I think this is why. You know, my best quarterback, hopefully, is a quarterback that we're just drafting. You know, he's a rookie coming out of University of Oregon. You know, Stefanski, he hasn't had it all that great. He might be on this list because of Joe Flacco kind of saved the back end of that season and led that team into the postseason. And obviously, D'Amico Ryans has a young, promising quarterback. So I think as they put entering this season, I think they are expecting high things out of, you know, even a young quarterback for the Houston Texans. So I think quarterback and well your quarterback plays has a big part in how high you are on this list. Andy Reid having the best quarterback in the NFL, highest on this list for a reason.
Yep. It's the most important marriage in sports, coach and quarterback. And if you don't have either, you're going to be trash. If you only have one, not the other, you're probably not going to be that good. If you have both, you're in a really good spot. And that's pretty much how it always goes in the NFL. All right. Thanks,
Bill Walsh, one of the greatest coaches of all time. Would we say he's the greatest coach of all time if he didn't have Joe Montana, Steve Young? Or would we say, you know what? Nope, regardless, he would have figured it out even if he didn't have Montana and Steve
Young. That's why Bill Walsh is the GOAT, the true greatest of all time head coach, in my opinion. Because not only schematically what he's done that is still going on in the NFL, the groundwork he laid on how to coach a football team, he did make that happen. He went and got his quarterbacks. He didn't just trip over a quarterback. He went and got Joe Montana in the 3rd round and developed him, and then went and got Steve Young while he still had Joe Montana, took him out of the scrap heap, developed him into Hall of Fame quarterbacks. So, you know, he made his quarterbacks. He didn't make them, but he was able to identify them and coach them. And it wasn't just this like amazing superstar quarterback that was dropped in his lap. It took time.
Dan Marino going to the Miami Dolphins during that time.
Right. It wasn't like a John Elway type of talent. It wasn't a Patrick Mahomes. He crafted those 49ers teams, which is what makes him so great. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Croc and I back next week right here, Locked On 49ers.